Hello, 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 and welcome back to i94 Podcast. It's Mums, Devo, and Rico, and today we are going to talk about education, the effects it causes on the youth today. Who started it? What's the purpose? Are we really learning? And today, to help us discuss education, we have
Brandon Williams,
Cedric Washington,
Dr. Karen Ratliff,
Kobe Chapman.
So today we're going to discuss a series of issues that we see in education. So I'm going to ask a series of questions and I'm going to open up the floor for discussion. So does education facilitate racism? Did the United States intend to help black children? And if so, why wouldn't they financially support segregated schools? How has the Brown versus Board of Education benefited black people since 1954? Is there really a school-to-prison pipeline system? These are just some of the questions that we will address. So I'll open up the floor and let our guests, just dive in.
Go ahead. All right, cool. Let's run over that first question there. First one.
Does education facilitate racism?
Absolutely. I would say public education does. As far as, racism being systematic and there being a such thing as institutional racism. Mm-hmm. For example, on standardized testing, having certain types of vocabulary words. If my students in the inner city didn't learn those vocabulary words, then when they see them, they're not going to recognize them, which means they're not going to understand them, which means that they can't effectively conquer that test and get a great grade, which means that they'll be put in different schooling when it comes to, further education. And, that's all. The difference between them learning that and not learning that is being in a school, which is usually a school selected by your area or where you're living, and your area where you're living is determined by your financial status, economics, and so it's like the economics of education.
So with that, what part does economics play when we talk about education primarily for black people?
when you look at that aspect of economics, you're talking about funding for schools. So this is why the standardized testing push so much, because in order to get funded for the schools, you got to get a certain mark on the test. And essentially what happens in regards to the racism part is you get these curriculums in these various schools, but the curriculum is not aligned with information that's supposed to be understood on the standardized test. So therefore what happens is you get a lot of our kids that have these low scores because they're buying into these curriculums. However, then you're getting the measuring rod is the standardized test. So the standardized test is showing low scores for our inner city kids because we're putting these whack curriculums into our schools. So therefore, that's what you have. So then you're looking at how can we boost the scores? How can we boost the scores via the funding? So that's what you're looking at in regards to, racism in education.
Funding is also based on attendance as well. But in regards to funding, are the inner city schools receiving the same technology, for example, than up north?
Of course not.
Okay, so it takes a lot of money to bring in smart boards and computers. The average student in our communities, do they have a computer at home? Do they have a laptop at home? If not, can they do their homework successfully, or they have to stay after school to go to the library to work on their computer? So I think that funding has a lot to do with getting the tools that the students need in order to advance in education.
Absolutely.
To add to that, most of those funds are privatized. So for instance, in particular, like what's going on today in CPS schools. Well, CPS schools is the only school system that's being targeted amongst any other school system citywide. Our state budget hasn't even been confirmed yet. So those city schools won't receive funding. So then that creates this domino effect of, okay, now we're going to privatize funds. So Mayor Rahm Emanuel has all these various people hooked up, mostly Jews and Caucasians that he outsources to. So now they're building the charter schools. And those same students that were once a part, that they'll tell us, oh, well, they're not attending school, so that's why we need to close the school anyway. For instance, Diet High School, that was on a hunger strike due to financial funding, due to different rodents and infestation being in their school. So they're lagging in those areas. And it's just like a continuum of us just not receiving like the type of financial funding we supposed to receive, and people that aren't us controlling us on a larger scale all throughout the school systems, especially CPS.
And then expecting it to be fair.
Right.
So when we go into discussion talking about funding, right? Okay, after the case we were just talking about, what was it?
Brown versus Board of Education.
Board of Education. Okay, after that case went into play, and it was the decision to integrate the school systems, right?
Desegregate schools.
Yeah, basically, have black kids go to white schools, stuff like that. But in the midst of this going down, there was no push from the United States government on a funding side to really put money towards African American schools or education. Because before that time happened, before we had that, it was black teachers teaching black kids in black schools, teaching that. But what has happened that when we do have this issue of separation now in schools, because we're talking about inner city schools where it's majority black, majority white, there's still no push for the funding, because how can you have, you're basing funding off of test scores, of kids who are not getting funding to make the test scores. So it's a domino effect of repetitions every year that you're fighting for something. So it's like a dying case to a certain degree. So that's what ties into the school to prison pipeline, for instance, because a kid is going to want to see success in order to be successful. When we grew up, we saw certain things that made us want to be successful. We saw, we got the historical context of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, stuff like that. But our kids today, they don't even have a real touch of cultural inclusion to really know what their history is in school. And that's what differs from them to us from when we were coming up different. Because everything is based on funding, so everything now is watered down. You're not getting the same effect that you got to a certain degree, to where at least when we got to college or whatever the case was, we kind of had a mindset to a certain degree of looking for that stuff. These kids don't even look for that stuff at all.
No comprehension.
They don't look to no black history.
Nah, because it's not being taught in schools.
That's what I'm saying. But even coming up as when we was coming up, I never knew that coming up until I got to college that we were pharaohs in Egypt and stuff like that.
You're
Like,
not going to hear anything about that.
but see, that's what I'm saying.
That's the problem with education,
The kids, in order for a kid to really learn the way that they should learn, they need to find something also that they identify with.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in the school system, I feel like, that's having so many issues right now in certain curriculum and standardized tests and this and that. It's nothing that they feel like they identify with. So what happens? They don't care.
But again, that's because of funding. So as an administrator, as a principal, if I don't receive funding and I have to cut a teacher, will I cut out the Black History teacher, or will I leave the math teacher in? So those are hard decisions.
But what's
that
more important,
the principal, it depends on the principal. The principal make those decisions.
Okay.
The final decision, I need to cut art. I need to cut Black History because I need that math teacher, because we have standardized testing that tests math. It doesn't test art or Black History.
And if hypothetically she says, I'm gonna keep the African Studies teacher and I get rid of the math teacher, you're gonna have every parent in the district protesting at your school, and then you're gonna get put out, right? Yeah. And the thing is, when that teacher gets put out or whatever, that program gets cut, where's the outcry? Where's the supplemental education that's gonna fill that void, or say like, well, I think this is important, so we're gonna have this, or reach out to the community and say, who will come in here and teach our children their history?
Absolutely, but the foundation and the key piece again is funding. If I had funding, I could get as many teachers as I want. I could get a history teacher, an African American teacher. But if I don't receive that,
but could you though? Because what if you're a principal that
I absolutely
you don't even, I mean, you personally, but what if hypothetically you're a principal that don't even identify with your own culture? So that's not even something that's on your mind.
Absolutely.
And we have
You're
so
right.
many educators, in my opinion, that don't identify with being black, so they don't see the importance of teaching kids that look like them their own true history.
Absolutely, and I totally agree. So if someone from the North Side is coming to teach me, who grew up in Inglewood, how can I not only identify with you, but what can you teach me as a kid?
You can't even relate. And I think that's where education starts, with being able to relate those that you're supposed to be teaching. So I would pose a question: can people from other ethnicities teach black kids? Yep. Is it beneficial?
I would say, and this is what I would say, people with other ethnicities, they could teach our kids. However, you have to come in and teach our kids with wanting to learn the culture. A lot of times, I've been teaching 10 years and different institutions, so I've impacted a lot of different kids from Gary, Indiana to Chicago, West Side, South Side, even North Side. And one of the things that I pride myself on personally is creating organic relationships. And in whether you're black, white, Hispanic, if you're gonna come into a classroom, you're gonna have to know your audience. You have to learn who you're dealing with. So I wouldn't say that they cannot teach the kids, but what happens is they're not coming in wanting to adapt and learn the culture of the environment in which they're teaching it. So you got a kid that's from Inglewood, and his mother works nights, or his mother may not work at all, but she's out in the streets, just to, give me a stereotypical example. And that kid comes in hungry, the kid comes in sleepy, the kid comes in lethargic, and the teacher not understanding the background of what goes on in these neighborhoods, so it makes them not, it shows any sympathy for it. So you have to connect and understand your audience. Now, what happens organically with us teaching our people is we are familiar with these situations. And being familiar with these situations, we're able to combat these situations accordingly by creating organic relationships.
Yeah.
So to answer that question, that's what I, believe in regards to.
I look at today and what we see, and I feel like, me personally, I don't feel like other people are qualified to teach our kids, because when you look at the perceptions that, are put out there about us, they're afraid of us. Let's just be honest about it. White people are afraid of black people. So if you're a young white teacher coming out to Teach for America, and you are teaching in an urban school, because that's mainly where they place them to get the experience, and then they go, you are teaching kids that, first of all, you already feel some type of way about anyway. So how can you connect with them on a level to where you can actually educate them that's beneficial for them?
You have to connect first, because students don't care what you know till they know that you care.
And that's where,
true.
and all of this correlates, because that's where the racism comes in regards to education. Because how often do you get inexperienced teachers that come into these other districts on the north side? So traditionally, it's almost like a guinea pig experiment. We're send these young, white teachers.
You fresh out of college, you 23 years old.
And then they're going to get not necessarily an adequate education, because you're already 3-4 grade levels behind. But what you're getting at now is you got to connect to this culture. How am I going to control this classroom? So, being a teacher, you're looking at probably 70% of your classroom time is dealing with redirecting behavior.
Exactly.
Opposed to teaching. So then that's where the frustration comes in, and ergo, that's where the prison pipeline comes in at, because now it's like, you know what, I can't deal with you, get out.
the classroom.
Boom, now you get out. Now you put a stigma on yourself, you that kid, and then from there you get suspended. Then you get suspended, then you like, man, I don't even want school.
You got a record. You getting a record early on.
It's so many different connectors that makes this thing spin the way it spins, which is why, at the end of the day, we have to come together and create our own. And when we create our own, we're able to implement our own curriculums. We're able to put role models in front of these kids so they can see, what it is that they can strive to be when they, get older.
And you insulate yourself from those other problems.
Absolutely.
For example, if we're in a community all by ourselves and we are shopping with each other and practicing cooperative economics, then this is a low income area according to whoever thinks it is. But according to us, we're like, all right, keep thinking this is a low income area. It's high income. That's why them people coming through trying to extort us. But you brought up a good point. I never really thought about that. Like the Teach for America. That's just like getting free lunch versus having money to pay for
lunch.
a 6. Getting money to pay for a 6-course meal, because, like she said, back to funding. If we don't have the funds to pay the top notch and pick the teachers that we want to come in and educate our children, then it's like, okay, you get the luck of the draw. And if you have a budget and you want to save money, it's like, well, I'll take Teach from America, because I don't know if they get any money at all or if they do it for free for experience. So, but I know that they don't cost more than these great educators that they're trying to handpick to teach their youth.
So where are the black teachers, though? Like, why aren't there any young black teachers or people like us that want to teach us?
You know what? Education is not promoted in the black community like that. First of all, we come from such areas where, like my man said here, low socioeconomic, that we're looking to strive to create. We're not looking at education in a sense where, I can give back by educating these young brothers and sisters so we can, uplift our community. So education is always looked at as low on the totem pole via salary. So, you know, that's the thing where why you don't see a lot of us in the schools, because, you know, it's always preached that teachers don't make money. Right. And it's not that, you know, I make a lucrative amount being a teacher in my eyes, but it's a passion for me. It's not work for me. This is like my purpose, what I like to do.
Financial aspect,
you know, so, and you know, yeah, not as much, but at the same time, I know that it's important to be able to give back. I know it's just as important to be a black male standing in front of a bunch of kids so they can see a positive image. You know?
You see how they look at you too.
Yeah. In every school that I've ever been at, man, I've always been receptive. The kids always been receptive to me. I still to this day reach back and communicate with kids that I've taught years ago. So the reality is we're not promoting education because we're saying that it doesn't make money. So when it doesn't make money, you don't have people of color into the classroom. Ergo, these Teach for Americas and things of that nature come together, and then you see this influx of people that's, you know, not of color teaching our kids. And then we complaining about it because why? We don't promote us to be educated.
And we have options. And so since we have options, we feel like I don't have to educate. You know, like I can educate the people who are around me. Which is true to a certain extent, you know, being involved in community centers and things like that. Oh, yeah. But because we have, it's almost to the point where, like, if we have more options, it can hinder us almost. Because, for example, if you look at other cultures, they have their children, like, if you go into the Chinese restaurant or something like that, their children are running all through the restaurant. And they're watching everything that they're doing.
They soaking up.
That's why I brought my nephew here today. You know what I'm saying? So he could just see it. Whatever he's gonna soak up, I know is gonna, like, he's gonna get positivity because you guys are all positive individuals. You know what I'm saying? So I want him to be around y'all and just see us interacting, so that as he gets older, he can say, "Oh, this is how I should interact."
Right, because that's what the culture looks like to him at a very young age.
Every day, we go into a gas station in our neighborhoods, and the same example you just gave, I see. You will see a young, Pakistani or Arab, whoever, 12 years old, working the cash register, getting that experience.
That's like that by my house.
You see that, and you know, I remember looking at that one time. I was like, man, I never even noticed. You know, you go in, you get your gas, or you get some chips or pop, whatever you do, and you see this little dude on the cash register, and it's like he's honing a talent right there. So that type of education,
he's honing a skill.
He's honing a skill right there,
and learning
the business.
And I feel like that's something that plays our community. Is when you look at other cultures, they send their kids to school based on the need of the community, where black people send their kids to school just to say, you either gonna work or you gonna go to school, but you have no plan.
I was gonna say that same thing go for, like, think about the Chinese culture, right? Like, think about how in China, how when their kids get to a certain age of, like, teenagers like that, they'll send their kid over to America to get an education and learn from the system that's already built here, so they can know that when that's done, guess what? You coming back over here because now that you got what they taught you, you know how their system work, you know how it operates, and you know the weakness of it, so you can create a strength and you can bring it to our people. We can develop it, and now we just keep that cycle going. We keep the cycle going. But opposed on our end, we don't ever think to that degree, because the first thing we do when we go to when we get a degree or education, we run to go work for somebody else. That's the first thing we taught to do in education. I want the corporate job, or you know what I'm saying, I want the job that pay this much money, this and that. They don't give you that sense of caring when you working through your college degree for you to think that it's something that you need to do to give back.
I can't remember who made the point. I think it was you, in regards to, they say either you're going to get out the house or you're going to go to school.
Yeah.
One of the things, like myself, teaching English. I use English as a tool to not only teach history. Writing is Achilles heel for our kids. Texting and things of that nature, shorthand, so they want to write the way they talk, right? Yeah. So and I'm a hip hop head to the fullest. I speak more slang than anybody, and I like to show that code switch. And you got to be able to turn it on, turn it off. So that's one of the reasons why I went into teaching English. Excuse me, but saying that to say, what I do is I teach my seniors. I said, listen, this is what you need to do. You need to figure out what it is that you like to do. So then you figure out what you like to do. Look and see what you can major in. So if you can major in that, then you can get an occupation. So then your job won't be like work. You don't have to look at the clock every 5 minutes. Like, man, it was just 10:03 5 minutes ago. That type of thing. So it's like we have to teach our kids. Education is more than a notion of just academics. It's preparing them. It's giving them knowledge so they can say, okay, look, I want to go into education. If I want to go into education, then these are the things I need to do. Let me go in and sit in on Mr. Washington's class or sit in on one of my favorite teachers' class just so I can get a feel as to, how it is. You got to spend some time interning, without interning, if you will. You got to be around what it is that you want to do. And that's what we don't express we don't express the plan. We just say go do it without giving them some sort of blueprint as to how to get it done.
I agree.
And that's because the people don't know. Parents don't really know. So if they don't know, they look to the teachers to give the answers. So I can, like I was telling you, I think you and I were talking the other day, and I could say class from 8 to 3:30, I can chisel all this, information off you, unlearn you essentially, and then reteach. But if you go back home, and guess what? You're going back to the same environment.
Exactly.
So then you're going to go back to doing the same thing that you do. So then you come back the next day, I'm chiseling again, I'm reteaching,
trying to
going back
remold
to the
that
same
person.
thing, trying to remold. So we have to understand that it's not just academics. So I teach English, like I said, twofold. So we do a lot of writing. Then from the writing topics that we do, whether we're doing persuasive writing, informative writing, creative writing, I'm always using the topic based on history, African American studies. I'm giving us something so you can learn how to write, because that's what you're going to need when you go to college. But at the same time, you're getting that knowledge yourself. You're getting that knowledge yourself, and you learn, and you're being proud of, who your pioneers and your culture are. So, but when that happens, that's when that attendance raises from your colleagues in school and things of that nature, because it doesn't seem like teaching. Because you're teaching about yourself. This is a true story for myself, because I can hit on all the English standards that I need to. But because I'm talking about Malcolm X, or I'm talking about the Black Panther Party, it's like
you diverted from the plan.
Right. What are they doing? Right. If you come look at my lesson plans, I'm hitting all the standards.
Yeah.
But now they walking around like Huey P. Newton in there. They're like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Because that's not what education is supposed to That's not what education is supposed to do. Education is supposed to train. And what you are doing is true education, because you're giving them knowledge yourself along with the tools necessary for them to be able to thrive in society.
Absolutely.
I have a question for our female guest. In education, would you say that men are more impactful or more women more impactful when it comes to educating children? And I'll let you guys speak to that.
Women already come from a nurturing role, so it's to be expected that that's what a woman is going to do. She's going to ask me, do I really understand this? Am I comprehending that? Whereas if you put a black man in the classroom, which, and I'm going to tell you, in most classrooms throughout Chicago, it's typically a gay black man in the classroom. So young men really don't have something that they can identify themselves with. But when you do put a black man, and no, to all the listeners, I have nothing against gays or anything like that, but I'm just saying the way our culture is set up now. But when you do put a black man in the classroom, it's very powerful. I come from a school, Chicago Excel Academy. Mostly all my administrators are black men, and it's very powerful. The young men take on a different respect. Whereas, because they typically come from these homes that are single parent homes,
impoverished neighborhoods,
that when something is so untypical, it makes them consistent, if you will, as opposed to, man, it's just like mom at home, so this is just like mom in the classroom. I see that, but when it's a black man, it takes on a new sense. Even for the females, they feel more secure. They feel more. I don't know, even their posture is just a little different. They sit up in the classroom, the ears are peaked, because it's like this is something totally different from what the normality is.
The male is needed in the home just as much as the male is needed in the school. So to me, it's the exact same. I say 100% we need that male in the home, and I would say the same thing. We need that male in the school. It's that forceful, it's that impactful. I would say 100% more than a female, because that's what we're lacking today in the home and in the school.
Yeah, I believe every child needs 100% masculine energy and feminine energy. I believe that
balance.
your father teaches a man manhood, but the mother validates it. And the woman teaches the daughter womanhood, but the father validates it. So if I tell a young man, okay, dress up, do all of this, act like a gentleman, and then his mom is like, oh, you look so handsome, good job, then he's like, thanks.
feel good.
He's like, thanks, Dad, you didn't send me off, right? and then the daughter, right, if she's like, be ladylike and do all of this, and he's like, oh, look at you look so pretty. She's like, thanks, Mom, you didn't send me off. So when we have these counterparts missing, we seek for that validation, and if it happens to come in a teacher, because teachers are the new parents. Let's get it, like, because they spend 8 or 6+ hours with your children per day. You get off
More
work,
hours than a parent does.
more hours than the parent does. And I think the thing about, like, father, I grew up in a 2-parent household, and I was really thinking about the dynamic that students or children, right? The child's innocence, right? They don't know any better until it's brought to them. So, like, the child that comes from a single parent household doesn't know that that's a bad thing or an insufficient thing to have until he's reading a book and it's like, Jane's mom and dad, and he's like, Mom and Dad, I know Mom, and then he's like, oh, what does that mean? And if he lives in an environment where all of his peers have single parents, then he's like, oh, it's no big deal.
Right.
He can get but
it's comfortable.
Right, it's comfortable. And so these are the different things that make us
bad.
Yeah. And these are the different things that the examples. The best thing you can be is an example, and a positive example is at that, because a lot of them don't know what it looks like. We need to create what it looks like. Some women don't know what it looks like for a man to hold a conversation with them and not want anything else. Some brothers don't know what it looks like to see a black man approach a black woman with any ulterior motives, and for him to be single too. Because most people think, oh, well, if he's in a relationship, that's why he's not doing it. It's like, no, where's the integrity? Where's he's just not doing it because it's not the right thing to do. And so that's.
And again, that's why I say that is something. Why I strongly feel that we should be responsible for truly educating our children, because children mimic behavior at the end of the day.
Period.
And whatever you see, that's what you will do, and especially if it's coming from somebody that looks like you, that you can identify with.
It starts at home. Everything starts at home. I mean, we can depend on educators as much as we want to, but overall, we don't necessarily know that person. I mean, we want them to care, but we don't know if they are going to care. But we know we still have to send our child through this system, what I'm saying, year after year, week after week, because that's just what we just been put into when it comes to this.
Yeah.
So regardless of what happens, we talked about the issues with funding and stuff like that, and with the kids at school and stuff like that. We hope that they can get the best thing they can get, but when they come home as a parent, we have to play that role to some degree to where we can dissect between what they learned, give them our own life experiences from what we know, and then that's going to have them analyze the two and dissect how they grow. That's going to determine how they kind of analyze things when they go back to school. Because what's going to happen is if you do this at a younger age, when that child gets to high school and they start coming into their own, into themselves, that's something they're gonna remember.
They have foundation.
Yeah, they got the foundation built already because you started it at a younger age where you was kind of giving them the two, like, okay, you're going to go to school, this is what they're going to tell you. But when you come home, listen, this is really what it is. We weren't just slaves, as you may see in Education for the Black History Month, that they teach you this in school. We weren't just this. It was blacks over in America before. We didn't all just come from Africa. You have to give them that. But the thing is that as parents, as black parents, and I'm not saying I'm guilty of it. I may be guilty of it. I know some of us are. But I feel like our overall perception is that we limit education to a certain level when we growing. So like once you finish college, a parent or a black parent may feel as though, okay, well, my education part of life is done.
It's done.
And I think that's a major problem, because when you start talking to kids and youth, all you start hearing from, when I used to mentor at SIU, when we had the kids coming through the CAS program and whatnot, you would hear them just say, well, I'm just gonna get this 4-year degree and that's it. Or I'm just gonna do this and that's gonna be their part. Or they already got a plan that I'm just here for a year. I'm gonna go back to the crib and do this and that and that's it. But the issue is that parents like to limit themselves, so when they do that, the child takes up the same behavior. It's the same thing. I'm just gonna finish this because all I know is my mama didn't finish high school, so I'm just gonna finish this one part over her. That's gonna make me good. And I'm back out here.
Right.
And speaking to that, when it comes to the parental involvement in education, I feel like when it pertains to the black community, that's one of the things that we love to pass the buck on, and we don't want to take responsibility or accountability for the fact that parents don't play the part that they should. because education truly starts at home. From the time that your child is born into this world, until they're of the legal age to where they can attend school, it is your job as the parent, whether you single parent or you have a 2-parent household, to equip them with what they will need. So by the time your child goes to school, they should know how to spell. They should know how to write their name. They should know color, shape, sizes, all the things that they'll be introduced to. But where we fall out at is that we don't prepare our kids for anything, and then we blame the system. Exactly.
Everything's dependent upon the teacher,
which makes the teacher's role so vital, man. End of the day, we can, get on the soapbox and we can talk about all the, the different quirks and idiosyncrasies of, what's going on with our people. But the bottom line is this. As an educator, I realize that I am a surrogate parent, I realize that everybody is not gonna have knowledge of self. Everybody's not gonna understand. So, I can't get caught up in, the pay ramifications. Oh, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting that. I have to understand that, it's a duty, it's a purpose that I gotta do.
It's a moral responsibility.
It's a moral responsibility, which is why, sometimes you gotta walk away from things, because of that moral duty. But going back to my point, we said so many different things I want to touch on. I learned how to tie a tie later in life, adulthood.
Me too.
As we all probably did.
I come to work certain time every day. I got my hair, as you can see, what they call them thought boy haircuts.
Wow. No, they do though. I mean, if you wear your hair natural and it doesn't subscribe to what the system says you should look like,
that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So, I'm still, end of the day, I'm still black. I'm still, I absorb the culture. I do this purposely because I want them to be able to see. Never judge a book by its cover. I got extensive vocabulary. I'm teaching you. That doesn't stop me because I wear my hair a certain way. That doesn't stop me from being intelligent. Saying that to say, one day I just was messing around with my tie in front of the classroom, teaching. This happened. I just took it off. And I said, how many people in here know how to tie a tie? Nobody raised their hands. Even the girls wanted to learn. And one of the things that was funny, one of my female students said, I want to learn how to tie a tie so I can do it for my daddy or do it for my boyfriend, that type of thing. This is the thinking of the nurturing.
That's the mindset.
The nurturing of the female.
Yeah.
But going back to that, I took my tie off, and in the middle of my lesson, I just started teaching how to tie a tie. I've done this on a middle school level. I've done this on a high school level. The point is, it's little tidbits, man. There's so many things that, as an educator, we do just naturally. People don't even understand because we are constantly filling in the gaps. We basic skills. We focus on this standardized testing so much that the art of basic skill is lost. Subject verb agreement is lost. So if I'm teaching, if I'm coming out of curriculum where I want them to articulate something that they've learned, they don't know how to articulate it because they can't write. They can't put on paper what it is.
First of all, what's articulate?
Exactly.
I don't even know what that means.
Right, exactly.
Articulate? You mean speak?
Right.
Why you ain't just say that?
Why you just say that? Exactly.
Right.
But it's so much, man.
Use some big words again.
Right.
Right. And also, one of my mentors, by the name of Teray Hill, senior, y'all might know him as Phenom. He's an MC and a poet. And one thing, when I started doing education and working with youth groups, I was using one of his tactics, and I asked him permission to use it. And he was like, "Man," he said, "Bro, if you use my medicine to heal somebody else, what I'm mad at?" And so one of the things that he taught me that I passed on to a student the other day, I was picking up my nephew, and I saw a student in the hallway. He was in trouble, and then he was like, one of the security guards was like, "Man, go in the office and sit over there." And then he was like, he keep messing with me. And I came to him. I said, "Hey, man, come here, brother." So I addressed him like that.
Yeah.
"Hey, brother, what's your name?" He was like, whatever his name was.
Right.
I forgot. It wasn't important. The lesson was. So he's like, he said his name, and I was like, "You play video games?" He was like, "Yeah." I said, "All right, when the controller stopped working, what do? Do you get another controller, or do you just turn the game off?" He was like, "I get another controller." I said, "Well, they pressing your buttons. If you let them press your buttons and you react, they're going to play you all day.
Yeah.
So make them get another controller." He was like, "Oh." And something as simple as that is probably going to help him tenfold.
Absolutely.
In the future. Man, they've been playing me. I can't let them play me, you know, and, like literally. And so it's things like that, little tidbits like that, to piggyback off what you're saying, and is very, very important for them to understand and just keep gems to remember that and go on in life, because you can apply that to everything, you know.
But you have to have people in place that care enough to even do that. And I say that because when you look at the breakdown of education, I looked at some stats, and 83% of educators are women, and over 83% of those women are white women. So what does that look like? When, you know, you have black kids and they have educators that are white women that, first of all, you scared of me. You can't identify with me. You really here for a paycheck, because the money that you getting to so-called educate me, you using that money to send your kids to a whole nother school.
Yeah.
So when it comes to issues that plague us, who's really been put in place to really help us?
Oh yeah.
And you know, it's not a commonality amongst all teachers, but like we was talking about Teach for America teachers and being that young, brought into a school system. Being that young, if with the knowledge base that most of those Teach for America teachers already have, they coming from these northern suburbs like Winnetka, your Northbrooks, things like Forest, things like that, where the curriculum and education is already to a level that's surpassed us on so many various levels. Like they have ice skating rinks, not just basketball gyms. So, you know, it's much of a difference, but I can do the minimum in this classroom and it's the maximum to these students. So at that level, we're still not gaining anything. And then those same teachers, once they're completed with their studies within these various programs, go back to their hometowns, and they're able to take those kids to a standard that's, you know, beyond our times. But one thing I will say, and I see this on a daily basis, is that if nothing else, these teachers are becoming so very educated. They come, they'll tell me, oh, Chapman, I just can't believe there's nowhere to eat around here. I'm like, yeah, you can go across the street and get you a juice and some chips, because that's what the kids eat every morning. They're like, you know, I just feel so bad. So then they and it's just like the whole house and field yet again, right? Man, these kids are so disprivileged. You know what? We're gonna take up a collection, or we're gonna bring in some of our old things and give it to them. Now it's like it's that constant dependency. Like, oh, I gotta depend on them, and then they feel this privileged moment because that's what they're doing. They're helping beyond education. So it's just it's a messed up cycle.
It is. I mean, when you think about education when it pertains to black people, I think one of the biggest dynamics that a lot of people try to sweep under the rug is the effects that slavery had on us. People have to understand that there were laws on the books that prevented us from being able to read and write a book.
You get killed.
Even when you look at the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision, which was May 17th, 1954, Jim Crow law segregation was still the law of the land, which means, okay, so the kids can go to school with white kids, but what these black teachers gonna work? Because now you just,
They lost their jobs.
you have no job, you have no kids to teach, so what happened to that? And, you know, we don't look at the effects that, you know, those generational curses still have on us today.
Look at it now with Chicago, how back was that 2 years ago when they closed down all them schools?
Like 49 schools.
And you had 12,000 students that suffered, but on top of those students that suffered, what happened with those educators? What happened with those teachers? We had the strikes, one of those strike last year that the teachers had.
And they get ready to go another one this year.
And another one's about to happen. So, now that goes to funding on a federal level. now we're just getting into the school level. Right. Now we're going to a federal level because you think about, if I'm having all this turmoil and trying to keep something that's keeping my livelihood at stake, where in between that is my sense of caring going to come from for the kid? Because right now I feel like nobody cares about me. So then it comes a level of selfishness that kind of could get developed into a teacher to where, yo, man, I just got to do what I got to do because I'm just trying to stay afloat. Yeah. That's it. That's all. I don't care that you lethargic and that your mama went home yesterday.
That ain't my problem.
I don't care that you didn't bring the homework in. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to get the check. I'm trying to get out because, one, I don't even know if I'm going to be here next week.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's where it becomes a business, and that's why the charter sector is starting to grow because it's a business. So you know, you see a lot of these CPS schools starting to shut down, and then you see all these various charter schools popping up. These private-owned schools, or you know, people putting money into these schools. So you got different charter schools. After probably 10 years from now, it may not even be a CPS. To tell you the truth.
Yeah, I can see that too.
You know, and that's not just in Chicago. That's in
That's worldwide.
all across, you
But
know,
if the
all across
CPS
Chicago.
goes away and it's just charter schools, what about those areas and families who can't afford charter schools?
School to prison.
Charter schools are essentially part of public school, but it's not held under a corporation standard. So it's its own. You know, you can have a curriculum, you cannot have a curriculum. You know, one of the things about charter is like different organizations.
Nigga, you know who
Different
fund them
people.
Caucasians do?
I was just gonna say.
Nigga, it ain't us.
So I was just gonna say. So then that boils down to capitalism. Then.
Yeah. Nigga, that's what this country was built on.
Magic Johnson, you know, brought a couple alternative schools.
It's like Breadscape.
Yeah.
It's one out west.
He brought a couple, and I know I commend him, but I'm always been an MJ Michael Jordan fan. But on the flip side, for the people, Magic has definitely stepped up, and he brought a couple alternative schools to Chicago, which is good, but you don't really hear too much about it. But again, it's the business side of things, man. If kids are functioning significantly low grade level, then we come in and say, hey, guess what? We are going to create a school. So we're gonna create a school that's designed for this dynamic of kids, and then we're gonna come. We got this curriculum, boom, boom, boom. Guess what? Nothing changes because now you're putting in these white teachers that essentially has a problem with interacting with the kids and not connecting culturally with the kids. They're not trying to. Going back to what I was saying, the initial question: Can a different ethnicity teach our kids? You have to come in learning, wanting to learn, wanting to adapt. And that's what's happening. So you're just getting money hand over fist at the expense of us.
And I have
our education. So.
and that's good. But I have to say that there are some black organizations that want charter schools in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, but it's a fight.
It's a fight, yeah.
Okay, so you get to a political level. CPS, for example, have to prove those charter schools, but they only want certain charter schools in.
Right.
And so then that organization is faced with playing a political game. So at the end of the day, it's about politics and who knows who.
It's about business. Education is the new hustle.
Smoke and mirrors.
That's it.
And I'm not going I'm not gonna say, I'll never name drop or say anything in smoke and mirrors. And you talk about these different rates and, graduation rates and things of that nature, and it's to hook you, lure you in. Oh, they got 100% graduation rate for everybody going to 4-year schools. And being in a school and you like, I know good and well, I teach him, I teach her, she's going to a 4-year school.
Right.
But they put these, they put these statistics and numbers out to get the funding. It's a business, it's a hustle.
It is.
So you are pushing, and then that's linked to the collegiate level. So we gotta meet
Talk
this.
about it.
We gotta meet this quota. So you got a little representative recruiter that comes to the high schools, and they look at what's going on with the students. You got a 19 ACT, okay. So then we look at the GPA. A GPA is all right. We'll get you in here on what you call them. We get you in here in school. I forget, I'm losing my train of thought. But nonetheless, what it is it's
Scholarship.
not even
State
on
tuition.
No.
Okay.
But nonetheless, right. But what I'm saying is they get these kids in and they're not prepared because they got to meet a certain quota, right? So it's a business.
It becomes a numbers game.
It's a
I'm
numbers
kind of like
game.
that little program, like at SIU.
It was called CBS. It was called
CBS when I first went.
Center for Basic
They
Skills.
changed it to
So if you didn't have,
Basic is what I want
there
to
you
say.
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a certain, so now you have to get it 2.0 or better. So traditionally they might have you come in the summertime. So they say,
Yeah.
well, guess what? You're gonna get a step up on all your other
Ahead.
freshmen.
Yeah.
But really we need to get you in here and get you acclimated because we know you're not really there.
not
So
ready.
they pump your head up.
You from the jungle, we trying to put you in the city.
Exactly,
So we gotta train you to be around normal folks.
That's exactly what it is. It's a 6-week program. We're gonna get you in and we're gonna get you
That's like an
acclimated.
offenders program. Like when people come out of prison
Yeah.
and they have to go through a re-entry type program to get reacclimated with society. It's the same. Those same modules are used.
That's true.
And that's the because
everything.
one thing we have to realize is the people that were for segregation are the same people that made the rules and the laws and make our curriculums today. And we think that education has changed when it comes to black people, but it hasn't.
All-purpose ruling went down. That shit didn't change overnight. Just because that case went the way it did, it didn't just make the people that was in them systems care about what was changing.
Somebody has to enforce. Somebody has to enforce.
Yeah, nobody was there really to change the rules.
You are a person that already didn't like me, you were lynching me, you were killing me, you were putting it on the books that if I was trying to read, you could kill me. Who's going to enforce you making sure that I get? So now that it's
I'm
being
just sitting here.
Right, you're the gatekeeper.
I'm just an able body in the classroom.
I'm just an able body.
I mean, because I just gotta tolerate you. I gotta tolerate you for right now until I get you up out of here. Yeah. Once you get to this level, I'm gonna pass you 9th, 10th. Now you get to 12th grade. Let's say I do graduate you now, and you don't have the correct scores to go to be on the collegiate level. So now you forced out to get into the real world, but you missing all the educational pieces. You missing the nurture and culture. I mean, the nurture and culture that you're supposed to get from your own people. You're missing the so-called basic skills that they're supposed to try to teach you, and now you just left to do what? You turn to a life of what? Crime.
Yeah.
And crime and poverty leads to crime.
Because crime comes from based on a person, usually majority of the time, being on how their circumstances are. You turn to crime.
When you don't have
I'm in the hood. My kid is starving. My mama don't have no money. I don't have no money. My clothes is ragged. I can't do this. So what do you turn to? You turn to that life, and then that becomes it.
And then some of these things shouldn't even be crimes. You know what I'm saying? Right. Okay, so I know that's a whole different. But what I want to say real quick is like to what you spoke to earlier. You were saying about if your child goes to school and then when you come home you want to tell them, all right, this is what they're going to tell you at school, and this is what's going to happen different. One thing I remember when I saw the Malcolm X movie, and when Malcolm took his trip to Mecca and he came back, he realized he was like, okay, this is an American problem, more so than anything. And he said, okay, but with being in America, he was like, yo, we have to get along with each other before we work with other people. Prime example, bro, if y'all throwing a party, right, and the white folks come to y'all party, and then they're like, we want you to play country music, and you're like, we're not going to. Then they want to use democracy and be like, we're going to create a system so that people can make so that people can play country songs in Rico's party. But when Rico made his party, he wasn't thinking about these people. Right. So when they made the Constitution and all of this, they weren't we the people. They didn't say we the black people and everybody else. They said for everybody because they were thinking about how Britain was treating them. And it was like, we didn't like this, so we're leaving because of that. They weren't thinking about what if these other people come and play. And so with all that being said, I want to kind of put out a call to action to everybody that's listening that, listen, when your child goes to school and comes home, I want you guys to put it in your mind that act as if they haven't been educated. And teach them something.
Because they haven't. They've been trained.
And if you see a young man or whatever, don't say he should know. Yes, he should, but since he doesn't, what are you going to do about it?
Right. And as a parent, I am 100% responsible for my kid. I'm responsible.
Period.
I don't put that responsibility on anyone else. As a parent, I am 100% responsible for my child. Period.
But everybody do not think that way, though. That's the caveat.
That's the hard part.
That's the hard part.
Everybody,
I think they can.
It's like everybody not a leader.
I think they can.
Like everybody not meant to be an advocate. Like we talk about celebrities and stuff like that, and the things they can do with all the money that they
and influence that they have.
You look at people like Muhammad Ali and how he really stood on everything culturally bound for our people, regardless of the money, regardless of what.
Why? Because he was raised first.
That's what I'm saying. But we don't have a lot of that.
We got house niggas. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, we do. But what I'm saying is that if you think about all the collective millionaires that we do have that are blacks that are represented, if they took something and brought it back to instill into the future, then we would have a better chance of having some type of.
Who's gonna allow them to do that though?
We got $200 headphones.
That's the thing that comes to a fear factor. That comes to a fear factor because if you start to do something for your people or stand by your people, what happens? You're too scared they're gonna cut you off.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what the issue is in the community now. We too scared as a whole to really lean and do things on our own. Yeah, it's too fearful.
To show our power, man.
It takes
we gotta
village.
develop. I was gonna say, but we gotta develop our kids' mindset to not be as fearful. They have to jump out on the ledge. The thing I can tell you about coming across these youth, I'm sure y'all see it working with them, is that they don't fear nothing.
They don't.
They don't have a lot of fear nothing. They don't fear your religion.
They
don't fear your
rebellious.
politics. They don't fear being suspended. They don't fear your education. They don't fear nothing.
What's the guy to a non-believer? Don't believe anything. Come on now.
If they don't fear the parents at home, shit, what they gonna say to Mr. West?
What's
You know
that?
what I'm saying?
What's that? Oh, I can't think of that lady name we watched on Facebook when she talked about the school system in fear.
Yeah.
When she talked about how
Oh,
the
yeah,
teachers fear
yeah.
teachers fear the principal,
Yeah.
the principal fear the superintendent fear the board fear the parents. And out of all that pipeline, who not fearing nobody?
The kids.
The kids.
So
They're looking, they're watching to see the whole mechanic.
And they gonna
play
try
out,
you. They gonna
know?
try you.
And the kids are smart. They gonna play on it. They know what to do. Ergo, you can't beat the kids no more.
Yeah,
You know?
grow up.
All of that. Yeah, man.
speaking to that point, I want to ask this question, and anybody can jump in and answer. What part does education play in the school to prison pipeline? Because when you look at our numbers as black people, so they say that black people make up 13% of the U.S. population, and black men make up 4% of that population. Well, when you look at the prison population, we make up over 50% of the prison population. So, what part do you think education plays in the school to prison pipeline?
They're the front desk at the Greyhound station. If the Greyhound is a metaphor for the bus that's taking them to the destination, they work in the front desk.
It's going
At the
back.
Greyhound
It's a couple things that when you talk about school to prison pipeline. First of all, it's the discipline. Zero tolerance policy. You know, you do one thing, boom, I'm putting you out. Every time you do something, I'm putting you out. And then I'm putting you out, guess what's happening? You get suspended. You're not getting education. You're not getting education. You're out here on the streets. You're doing something. Guess what? You're going to play with fire. What's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? You're going to get burned. So now you're going to end up doing some other dumb stuff. Then on the flip side of that, because of the because the violence is so terrible, now you have police in the schools, roaming the schools. You have metal detectors, and you have to go in. So we talk about school to prison pipeline. You got to understand. You know, we did a research paper on this last year with my students. You going into a school,
Looks like.
and you have to take your stuff off and give one. Now, for some degree, you might have to give one down your book bags because of the violence. So you got to walk through a metal detector. Guess what? That's school to prison pipeline. What are you looking at? That's setting up some sort of juvenile detention
It's
type
training
of
you.
aspect. It's the visual that you're looking at, number one. Then you see police officers, full-fledged uniforms, pistol, then billy club, the whole nine.
Handcuffs, all that.
So this is in school. So what type of environment is conducive for me? I'm looking around and I see, you know, a full-fledged police officer. So, you know, that's, you know, and when the bell rings, we pass it, and he's directing us to go to class. You understand? The school I was at recently had the county sheriffs in there. The county sheriffs are the people that you see, like, damn, I ain't got my seatbelt on. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You scared of the county sheriff, they in the school. But the crazy part about it is, even that, going back to the fit factor, the kids don't fit. They don't fit. They still will cuss them out. I've seen it firsthand. It's just like, it's amazing.
And looking at another lens, how many people in prison have a degree, right? So I can always say, hey, knowledge is power. If I get a degree, I am probably not in as much risk than a person who is not educated, because I can, you know, just off the top of my head, assume that there are more people in prison without degrees per se than not. Okay, but my main thing about those who are in prison is simply because of poverty. If I have to eat, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to
That's the
eat.
first law of self-preservation.
If I have to feed my daughter, I'm gonna do whatever
you gotta do.
it takes to feed her. So we have to eat, and I would have to assume again, out of that 50% plus, those people don't have the money to go to the store
And they had the
and
resources.
feed. Now, of course, some of those people are probably there because, hey, I want to buy a nice car, so I'm going to go do this crime to get a nice car. But there's a lot of people in prison in there because they need
Based
to
off
eat,
circumstances.
period. And that's poverty.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. But and again, with the school to prison pipeline, the biggest thing is the discipline issue, the zero tolerance policy. So again, everything connects. You have young teachers just fresh out of school
with no
coming
life
in,
experience.
no life experience whatsoever, and they're not even in the same culture, ethnic background as the audience in which they're presenting in front of. So instead of learning to connect, they're just teaching. It's a job for them, right? So I can't handle you. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put you out. I'm gonna put you out.
You're a parole officer.
That's gonna perpetuate.
Teachers
the
are parole
cycle
officers.
that we're doing.
The principal is the warden.
And if the disciplinarian, the dad, the father, isn't in the home, then I'm not scared of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not
at
scared
all.
of anyone. If that disciplinarian is not in the home, then I don't have to be disciplined by anyone. So I'm going to do whatever I want to do.
And all of that was by design when
Right.
it comes to black people. Like, black men were purposely taken out of the home to set up this paradigm that we are currently looking at now. When you look at the number of men that are in jail for drug possessions or drug offenses, it's men of color. If white men was in jail and they made up more than 50% of the population, they'll be changing policies overnight.
What you mean? They'll let a bunch of them out overnight.
They wouldn't be there.
It'll be, they're pardoned. That's what it was back
Yeah.
then. They're pardoned.
And we're talking about drugs now. We're not talking about
We ain't talking about violent crimes. We're not talking about violent crimes because if you look at the history, it shows you that Caucasians are more violent than we are. That's how they got in the position that they in. The reason that the United States exists today was because of the violence that they use.
Boom.
But they don't teach kids that in school. They teach you, Columbus discovered America.
But even to connect to that, we talk about the violence of how America was even discovered. But then, who did they put in front of us in every February? Dr. Martin Luther King and the nonviolent movement.
That's the only one you got.
Nonviolent movement.
Yeah.
So you even look at that from a psychological perspective. Okay, so if you look at your history, you know, U.S. history is a requirement. African American history is elective. That's another topic. But at the same time, you look at all these wars that you got to learn for your U.S. history, and then when you get to Dr. Martin Luther King, because it's February, that's the only person we're gonna talk about.
He's 28
then
years.
we're gonna talk about non-violent movement. So again, psychologically, it's dropping that seed to be.
That's what you do.
That's what you dropping that seed.
It's
to
training
say,
you, to set
it's
you up,
training
to
you
program you.
to think. Despite what's going on out here, you don't be volatile to nobody. You know what I'm saying? Oh, y'all be volatile to each other, but when it comes to standing and fighting for something, this is what we want you to do. and that's pushed, and you know, people say that, man, it's conspiracy theory, you're thinking too much. But that's what it is. It's a conspiracy, you know, and unless we get educators in the classroom to teach that type of stuff, guess what? We're going to forever be, you know, lacking knowledge.
But if you get in that classroom and teach that type of stuff, will you keep a job?
Hey, man, listen, man.
And that's why.
I gotta eat, right?
So you talking to an educator that does that, man.
You got to.
I do that, man. Like I said, I use English as my platform to teach that, and that does come with flack, man.
Hey, speak. I want you to speak about how you are able to correlate and combine education with hip hop.
Oh yeah,
Because I feel like the reason that a lot of kids are so disconnected is because simply education is boring.
Oh, yeah.
Kids are in school for 8 hours and you got me sitting down talking to me about nothing. I can't relate to it. I probably didn't eat no breakfast this morning. My mind is on, okay, am I going to eat when I get home? We're going to have lights on. We're going to be evicted. And you teach me about something that I can't relate to. So I want you to speak to how you're able to, you know, combine education with hip hop to keep your students' attention.
no doubt. So I have this lesson. We do a critical thinking piece. So I use Malcolm X's Field Negro versus the House Negro, right? So I said, you know, we're going to learn about this and we're going to do critical thinking. We're going to learn how to think outside the box. And we're going to, you know, ask the whys and what for us, essentially. And we're going to write on it. So from that, I say, okay, we're going to learn. We listen to the speech. It's like a little 8 to 10 minute excerpt, not the whole entire speech.
Right.
And then I say, I throw some MCs on the board. You know, I put Lupe Fiasco, Most Def, Talib Kweli, throw a couple MCs, and I'll put Chief Keef, T.I., Lil Wayne. And I say, okay, so we're going to listen to the House Negro and the Field Negro so we can get an understanding in regards to, you know, what Malcolm X is talking about in these two different types of people. Now, let's talk about hip-hop. Let's talk about these MCs, Common, Most Def. So, you know, you say Most Def, who was that? Talib Kweli, I never heard of him, that type of thing. But they yelling out Yo Gotti and all these different Chief Keef and Lil Durk and, you know, all these different names. So I said, okay, so let's talk about hip hop, right? Let's talk about the message of hip hop. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna do some critical thinking, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna listen to some songs. So I let them listen to a couple of Talib joints. Listen to some most joints. Then we'll listen to a couple of, the requested joints, maybe Lil Wayne, T.I.,
right.
somebody for example. So the tie-in comes in like this. I say, well, Malcolm X was describing this house Negro as a person that was, by all means, not trying to uphold his people. He was trying to hold down his people. He was doing what the master wanted him to do. The field Negro was all about the people, trying to do something better, getting away from what they were. Where we're at. Now let's look at the state of hip hop. Let's look at something that was created and put together to take away the violence. The whole breaking started out, let's not fight no more. We're gonna break dance and we're gonna see who's the better by that way. Mm-hmm. So let's look at these rappers. Okay, why is it that anything that's degrading I hear on the radio, but I don't hear Mos Def, Talib Kweli, Common that much? Lupe. I don't hear these people on the radio. Why is that? So let's compare them to the house Negro and the field Negro. So the field Negro are the Mos Defs, the Kwalis. They want to get out good positive messages. They want to uplift the community. The house Negro, guess what? The Lil Waynes and the Chief Keefs, they're going to continue to perpetuate the violence. They're going to be doing all the things that we shouldn't be talking about. Why? Because their record labels are paying them. No different than, the house Negro and the field Negro. When you put it in that perspective, they like, dang. So I'm like, it made sense to them. So I'm like, look at what you're listening to. Look at how they're making their money off the expense of us. We all know music is a mood setter, right? So I'm teaching this to them. As the music go, behavior goes. You want to get in the mood with your lady, you're going to put on some slow grooves. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? You a basketball player.
3-piece.
Right, you're a basketball player. You're going to put on some joints to get hyped up before you get ready to hoop. So when you got this volatile music, talking about shoot 'em up, bang, bang, all these different things, and then add the elements of drinking and smoking, guess what? You got now... You non-conscious. You going out doing all of these things, and then there go the prisons being created because as the music go, the behavior gonna go. The behavior gonna go. Guess what? They gonna put them jails in. That's why the whole privatize of the business is with the jails are. So I use that to infuse in English to get them again, not the academic piece, but the social piece, so they can understand, what this whole thing is about, man. To create some more holistic people and some social critical thinkers.
And innovation is key in the classroom. One point that I realized in my research when I conducted my dissertation is that the number one reason that urban kids drop out of school, you would think violence, you would think I'm just tired.
It's boredom.
It's boredom.
Yes.
The number one reason that our kids are dropping out is because they're bored. Crazy. So that tells me that we are not seeking innovative. Teachers. Mm-hmm. We should be able to still teach what we need to, but bring in something that the students can relate to.
I feel like teachers should be able to develop their own curriculums as long as it is engaging the students, because when you look at education and who develops the curriculums for us, it doesn't benefit us. None whatsoever.
It's not made with us in mind.
Well, that's where, for example, a charter school can come in and develop their own curriculum.
But even with that, charter schools have, in my opinion, not so good curriculums, to the point where they don't even have books.
But they have the freedom to create their own
autonomy to be able to create.
Your point.
You have that freedom, but if you don't exercise that freedom.
Now that's one thing.
Right.
But see, because you talking about if you got the autonomy to do that, but then you bringing in teachers that can't connect. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Then that's what you talking about. You get a disaster. So you getting this autonomy and this freedom to do, but you just like, well, what I'm gonna do with them? That type of thing. So,
and sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen. You can get that with curriculum or with developing a new curriculum. It's like, well, I want to teach it this way. I want to teach it that way. Mm-hmm. But to speak on what you said about reaching the youth and connecting with them, ADHD, that's a fictitious epidemic. Just like how black on black crime is a fictitious epidemic, because the most crimes committed by that race is committed by that actual race. And so when it comes to like the arts, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why the arts work is because when you're engaged in art, you are fully your aesthetics are at their peak, right? Your senses are at their peak. When you're watching a basketball game or you're watching a play or you're watching a music show, you're like, oh man, that's exciting, and your emotions are going into it, and so you're aesthetically pleased. Ritalin and stuff like that is an anesthetic. You're anesthetizing them And so you're deadening them, putting them to sleep by that to make them look like they're paying attention. So we shouldn't be putting them to sleep. We should be waking them up, and we should be figuring out different ways to teach this education by using hip hop. A brother by the name of A.D. Carson, he's actually getting his PhD right now. He does this thing called the Poetics of Hip Hop. Good friend of mine. He is originally from Decatur, Illinois. And he'll take a lesson or a lyric and spark a child's interest. So, for example, Jay-Z lyric, right? Say, you guys know who Jay-Z is? Yeah, all right, cool. Jay-Z said this: blame Reagan for making me to a monster. Blame Oliver North and Iran contraband that they sponsored. So first he will break down the parts of speech of Iran and Iran being puns, or not puns, but homonyms and homophones. And he'll say, like, okay, what does that mean? But he'll ask the children, like, to create the discovery moment. So he's like, what does that mean? It's like, okay, blame Reagan. Who is Reagan? They're like, oh, isn't he a president?
Ronald
all right,
Reagan.
cool. Boom, let's write that down. Y'all know who Reagan is, right? So then it's like,
So you learn the
all
politics.
right. But because you want to know through this Jay-Z lyric, not verse, not song, which taught me that hip hop is very compact and a lot of rappers don't even know what they're doing. And so it's like, all right, blame Oliver North and Iran Contra. Who's Oliver North? I don't know. Let's look them up together, right? Iran's a country. What's the Iran Contra scandal? Oh, this is when they traded weapons for hostages and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, oh, and then it's like, okay, now I can tell the young boy that might sell drugs or might run packs, this is why you really shouldn't sell drugs. Versus, oh, you could just get caught. You know, because then if I tell you, don't do it because you can get caught, if you don't get caught, you feel like you're Superman. Right. You know, because that's the only consequence. But if I show them, teach them this lesson about the crack era and say, like, listen, bro, cocaine doesn't grow in the U.S. You can't get that here. You know? Right. So and how did it end up on your corner?
In your community, man.
And all of that from one Jay-Z line in a verse, in a song, and using that to connect with them. And now it sparks their interest and they want to read more about it. And so I can, in a rap, I'm not gonna do the whole rap, of course. I'm not stingy like that, but I'm not greedy like that. But in a rap, I was breaking down the idea of welfare and how it can be not a non-benefit to black men or whatever. And I said, in a country that is capitalistic, the po folks labeled capital misfits. Some can't afford a cap on a lipstick or to pay attention, so they ask for assistance. Uncle Sam say before we proceed, mama gotta kick daddy out to receive green. He laughing like, he. She think they out of debt because I took out the D and then left her with EBT.
That's you?
That's me. And so just breaking down the whole line or the whole rhyme, like, okay, and some of them got it, some of them didn't, but it's like, okay, what am I talking about? In a country that is capitalistic, the po folks label capital misfits, right? If poverty leads to crime. If you don't have any money, then you feel like you don't fit. You don't have any livelihood, nothing to live for, nothing to do to provide for your family. Then it's like, okay, some can't afford a cap on a lipstick or to pay attention, so they ask for assistance, right? And it's like, well, okay, if you want this money, then fam gotta go. If you have an older man in the household, he has to go for you to receive this electronic benefits transfer, which is EBT, a link card, so on and so forth. This supplemental cash. And then I took that with the wordplay of the word debt and taking out the D representing the dude or the daddy, take out the D and left them with EBT. And all of that in the midst of rhyming. It's like, okay, you came to learn how to rap, but I'm finna show you
and
what
that's
raps
education.
do.
That's what education should look like across the board for us. And I feel like that's why music is something that was purposely taken out of the schools, because again, when you look back in history, when you look back at the history of African people, we are musically people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are rhythmic people. That's what we identify with. So when you put us in a paradigm that is...
It sparks the mental.
Yeah.
It sparks the mind.
But now we're in a paradigm that, you know, doesn't fit who we are as people. As the doctor spoke to, kids are bored, which means I wouldn't even say they drop out. I would say they're pushed out because it's all strategically designed to push them out. Because if I'm building a prison, to mind that I got to have some folks to go in these.
Forced labor. I need forced labor. I got too many investors on the back end that's helping me get what I want to keep my pockets fat, keep my family growing, keep what I want to have happen. Because all that stuff boils down to power. Power is the biggest thing here that causes majority of these problems. Yeah. So if I got the power, I want to keep the power until I die, and I want my kids to have.
I want generations to have it. You have to create a system.
I have to, but
and nobody speaks to that.
But we go through life every day overall as a culture, not thinking about that system. We just play our part. Think about it. In 1776, when Thomas Jefferson first created this whole thing for public education. It was created based off the strength that he just wanted to produce two type of people. Laborers and maybe a few geniuses is what he said in the statement. You can look it up online. You can research it. I did.
That's
Like,
white collar, blue collar.
Exactly. It was made basically for them to produce a work labor. That's all it was.
A working class.
So we didn't bought into that concept, and now you look hundreds of years later where we at now.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that you just getting. You just looking for somebody to fill a void, and if you don't have the mindset to be a laborer, then what's gonna happen? We're gonna put you in the system so you gonna labor for free then. Now we're not gonna pay you to labor because we put you in the system to do it. Same thing go for college. We've been in college, been on a collegiate level. It's only so much that they really give us as far as teaching us when it comes to making our own, to run our own business, doing our own thing.
That's not the purpose of college. It's not the purpose of education.
Right. I think in our classrooms we don't really provoke passion proactively. So without provoking that passion, most blacks are creative people.
Yeah.
That's who.
Period.
Who are, man? When I go to this concert, I want to see this person. Man, did you see this piece that like a Hebrew Brantley just dropped, or a Real Talk just spit, or we everybody know the ABCs A through Z through song, and that's what we are. We are rhythmic dance.
Yeah.
Rhythmic dance is a form of expression of being free. That's
on
what
now.
in Africa,
Speak on it.
that's what we. That's how we dance because we was free, and so. You know, we're not really honing in on the true niche. So if you got a piece, Real Talk, like talking about, I may not know the math or the science, but I can spit this, and but that has to be put on an esteem level too. You can't just say, and it's great. I mean, I love the black doctors and the lawyers of the world. But so many of us are creative people. Like, we like the arts and we like the music, and those shouldn't be electives. Those should really be like core curriculum classes in order to maneuver through, education.
But it goes back to the point of saying, when you say that should be core curriculum, you have to also take in mind that we don't create our own curriculums.
Boom.
And there are zero performing arts schools, especially high schools, on the south side of Chicago. There was one in Bronzeville, and they moved it to the north side. So for us to be
What's it called? What's it called?
The Phillips?
the performing arts school,
Chicago Performing Arts.
Yeah. Shy Arts.
Shy Arts, yep.
That was the only performing arts school
Great
on the
school.
south side of Chicago. Excellent school.
That's where
Just 2 years ago, they moved it up north. So now there are zero performing arts high school on the south side of Chicago.
Wow.
So for us to be so musically, invested, there's nowhere for that high school student to go to focus specifically on performing arts unless they go up north.
And see, that's the thing about education. You look at all of us in this room. We all have different learning styles. We learn differently. We have different interests. But if you take all of us and put us in a room and force us to accept this one system,
We ain't going.
but then if we not able to adjust to that, we say, oh, it's something wrong with him. So let me dope him up long enough so I can continue to miseducate him. So I don't have to deal with him. Because if you sit in the classroom and you like, man, look, I know what you're saying, but you're not keeping my interest. This is boring. Like, what else you got?
My son told me.
What else you got?
My son told me when he first moved to Texas, his mother put him in a school, and he was having issues adjusting with the move because I was in his life for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
So I used to get a lot of phone calls from her about a lot of rebellious issues that was going on with him. Like, he fighting, the stuff that he just never would do.
Right.
So I was like, the hell?
That ain't him.
I taught him to defend himself, but for it to be as consistent as I'm getting calls for it, that don't
It's a
sound
deeper issue.
normal. It's something to it. So when I sat down and had a conversation with him, he flat out said, I can't stay focused because I'm bored. Daddy, I'm bored. And I don't know what else to do. So yes, I do look out the window. Yes, I do not stay focused. But when I say, well, what's his grades like? Oh, he got all A's and B's.
So what the business is?
So because he had an issue of staring and not being focused on what you were trying to give him, but yet he to some degree kind of mastered what you giving him curriculum wise already. Now he has a problem. So now he's labeled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like they look for a way to label black kids so that they don't have the tools that they need in the system that they created for the success.
It's your fault, so we ain't got it. It's like a restaurant. We added that. We ain't got that no more.
Right, we ain't got no fries.
It's your fault.
Right.
Like even how school, right? certain schools teach us certain things, and in different formats is something else, right? Like they teach you, there's one answer, right? They teach you convergent intelligence versus divergent, right? Like there's one answer, and it's at the back of the book, and don't look, and don't share, because that's called cheating. But in the real world, that's called collaboration.
Right, networking.
it's like, yo, you tell. It's to tell. That's one thing, right? Even the first time I started working with youth, and one of them was like, "Yo, just tell me the answer." The answer, as if there's only
one answer.
One answer. So in life, you're like, what is the answer? Like, no, there are several answers, you know? And so they have divergent intelligence tests like IQ, right? IQ is based on stuff that you've learned. And so it's like once you learn it, it's not learnable anymore, right? And so with divergent intelligence is like taking a child and saying, okay, come up with as many uses as you can for a brick and a blanket. And if you give a child 20 minutes, someone might come up with 100 different answers, right? And that measures a different style of intelligence. Now, of course, someone who's been educated, they might be like a brick, smashing things, building things. But then, you know what I'm saying? A student who has an imagination, he's like, man, you can use that brick for this. You can use it for a door opener. You can use it for, you know what I'm saying? Like just basically, like what kind of brick are we talking about? Are we talking about a huge brick, a small brick? Are we talking about a blanket that's made out of coal? Is it made out of rubber? Is it made out of, you see what I'm saying? And so that's another type of intelligence. But school, I think that school says, all right, well, we want to have these numbers to give to parents. Because imagine if you sent your child to school and then you're like, how's my child doing? And they're like, he's doing good. And then you're like, what does good mean, sir? I want you to show me how good he is doing versus, but that's also a trained way of thinking of like, okay, I'm going to wait on these numbers. But numbers always lie because it's about how you read them. The candy bars say 30% more chocolate. It's 70% less or something. Right. We're not thinking about that. We're just like, I'm getting more. Like, what do you mean?
That's what education does. It doesn't teach our kids how to think. It teaches them what to think. I'm gonna read a quote from this book. It's from the Brighter Files again, and it says that educational systems are designed to control the thinking of people through the control and manipulation of image and information. And I think that's a profound quote because when you look at the paradigm of education and we look at the manipulation of it, and the images that we have placed in front of us, they don't reflect us.
You read that quote, and immediately what I thought about was the Bible. And I thought about Revelation 1st chapter, 14, 15 gives the only description of how he looks.
I mean, I got her a wool right now, so
yeah, all day. You know what I'm saying? And the depictions and the images that we see is totally different. We have U.S. history, government as requirements. African American studies is an elective that you may or may not get depending on where you at. So again, that quote is very profound because, you know, end of the day when it comes to our people, you know, we are getting shortchanged. And, you know, we can have all this, you know, intellectual dialogue, which is great, and, you know, sparking minds of the people that are going to listen. But until we create our own, we're going to still be like a dog chasing its tail, saying the same thing. And that's very important. You know, we got to instill these young brothers and sisters that's going to college, you know, to become educators. You know, we got to realize that everything is not always about the monetary aspect, but it's about keeping, you know, our people, our community afloat.
Cultural capital.
Exactly, cultural capital, and that's very important. You know, there's no reason in 2015 we shouldn't have a Black Wall Street in every region of America, from the east to the Midwest to the South to the West Coast. You know, it's just ways that we have to think. Education is not just academics. It's more than that. You know, it's a way of life. It's being able to understand how to, you know, matriculate in the world and have your generations, you know, to be successful and wealthy in the sense of not just money, but knowledge and power.
Right.
You know.
That's real. One thing I would do is my part. You know, I'm big on, I was just telling, before we got on the podcast, I was telling my brothers here, I said, yo, I'm big on preventions and solution. You know, like, I don't want to hear nobody saying, well, I was just saying, like, no, I don't care. That holds no value. You know what I'm saying? It's fruitless conversation to say, like, well, he should wear his pants on his waist. No, that's not a solution or prevention. Like one or the other. And so what I want to do as a solution is team with different artists to create new images and everything. Also, as we were talking about before the podcast, is that a lot of the quote unquote black leaders are like old and they're out of touch, and we don't know who they are, or we don't know why they're supposed to be important. We just know that we heard their name before. Right. So if we see him, we're like, oh, I know who he is, but I don't have any, you know what I'm saying, affection for this brother because I don't really know him like that. So what I want to do is like for people who are in the community, like for example, Kendria Harris, aka K Love, or Phenom, I want to find a website called Zazzle, and you know, I want to start putting out positive propaganda, basically, to help with the images. So what there's a website called Zazzle where you can order your own custom-made stamps. Okay. And so I'm going to take like brothers from the community that I notice in the other cities that are doing positive things, and I'm going to take their picture and I'm going to put them on a stamp.
No doubt.
And I'm going to start giving them to like, you know what I'm saying, like elderly women and stuff like that, and like so that when you get a letter, you might see your face on it or something if you're doing something positive in your neighborhood. And so it's like, then the child looks at it like, oh, let me look her up.
How can I get my face on that?
Right, because any other stamp, you know, people on stamps, it's like, oh, they're dead or they're old. So I don't really know. I kind of feel like y'all lying to me. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like, man, I don't really know this dude. You know? But bro, like if you saw a K Love on a stamp in your hood and you just saw her speak at your school, you gonna be like, wow, you know, that image does so much, you know, and so I want to get with other artists and start painting photos and start painting pictures of people who are doing great things, so that when people see the picture, they can be like, it's just up there, and then later on they'll be like, oh, I seen her down the street. Or they might say, you know what, I saw somebody that looked just like you in my classroom. And those are the things that change, because then they'll say like, oh, if she's big enough, you know, the child would say, oh, if she's big enough or important enough to be in this photo, in this classroom, then man, it's attainable. She's not dead. She's not old, an ancient figure, a statue. I can see her. She's living right now, and she's in her 30s. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, man, I'm trying to be like her. I'm trying to be like him. And so I'm going to start doing that, man. Positive propaganda, creating things to where, shout out to the brother Harold Green. He has a series called Flowers for the Living. We need to give more flowers to the living for the people who are doing things that are important. You know what I'm saying? We need to do our own award shows, our own things like that, and give them that recognition, that way and show them and boldly love each other, especially brothers boldly loving sisters. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole another conversation, but to boldly love and show affection for our people and show that we care about them, so that they won't go out and seek validation and look for like, I'm trying to get a Grammy or I'm trying to get a Teacher of the Year award from CPS. How about a Teacher of the Year award from your community? How about a community member humanitarian award? You know, things like that. A barbershop award. You know, things like that. Those are the small markets that I believe where a lot of our gender building and basically educating happens a lot is in barbershops and beauty salons, because the young men look and they look at the other men and just like young women do, they just watch what's going on and they watch how people react to it. And at that moment in time, if you're a barber or whoever's like running or elder in the shop, when you're holding your opinion and no one else says nothing, at that moment in time you become an alpha male or alpha female, because if nobody's combating you saying like, no, she don't know what she's talking about or he don't know what he's talking about, that's like being written as fact and code, you know, because there's been times in the barbershop, brothers, where we see a brother talking about, oh man, I've been with 10 different women, da 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 da, and we don't hear nobody saying that's wrong.
Why?
We don't hear nobody like, all right, you know what I'm saying? Or you hear a dude talking about, oh man, I'm finna get married next month, and they're like, wow. Oh, right. But in the beauty salon, it's like, in the beauty salon, it's the opposite. Right. In be in love, bro? And man, and just real quick, I say all this to say that examples. That's the point blank period. What I'm getting at is examples. And for those married couples out there, especially black married couples, man, if you can get out more so we can see y'all, we want to see y'all. People think y'all don't exist. You know what I'm saying? We want to just see what y'all look like. We can be like, oh my goodness, it's a museum, it's a statue walking around of a black couple showing black love. We need to see that more and more often, man.
No doubt.
Solutions.
Yeah, so just to close on it, like Brandon said, we need solutions, and I feel like the number one solution, we have to get back to practicing race first. I know a lot of people feel a certain type of way about it, but you can't worry about nobody else's problem until you fix your own. If your house is on fire and your neighbor's house is on fire, what you look like trying to help them put out their fire while your house still burning? So until we can fix our own issues, we don't really have the time to be worried about nobody else. So I feel like that's the biggest solution, is to getting back to practicing race first and not being made to feel ashamed for believing in that and standing firm on that. Like, it doesn't mean that I hate anybody. It doesn't mean that I'm discriminatory or I'm a bigot or I practice any other. That's fine, but at the end of the day,
coming regardless.
we have to stand firm and say, you know what, I care more about my community and my people than worrying about everybody else first. I can have empathy for other people, but my problems are way bigger.
I'm more worried about this. I'm going to close off to piggyback off what you said. I do believe that first off, we do have to worry about self. I think that when it comes to education, a lot of times we kind of just harp on the aspect of using college as the ultimate level of degree of success.
It's the ceiling.
I think overall our culture needs to kind of pull back from that, because we just talked about how everybody learns differently. So everybody's not meant to go to college. Some people are, some people don't. But I feel like what can happen is if we learn to take care of self first, the people that do go to college, when they do get these big time jobs, make this big money, what they need to do is they need to learn the process. Just like when you read The Art of War, you got to learn your enemy strategy by becoming your enemy's friend to a certain degree. You need to learn how the white counterparts built their business. You need to learn how they move through legislation. You need to learn it. And then when you learn it, instead of being selfish and just
bring it back to your own,
you need to bring it back to your community to build. And then for those who don't go to college or don't have that, teach them the entrepreneurship role as well, so that way they can learn to develop a business, to develop success, and they can mimic that, you know what I'm saying, and give that back to who they create. They can give it back to their kids. They can give it back to their nephews, their nieces, and stuff like that. So if we do that, I mean, I think our sustainability will be so much better, but I just think we need to utilize that as what the real form of education should be. So self-preservation before other preservation.
I'm going to close on this. I'm going to close on this quote. If you deny any people the knowledge of their history and culture, you deny them the ability to develop to their full potential. And that's real. You know, if you deny kids to know who they are and where they truly come from, you stunt their growth. You stunt their growth.
Indeed.
No matter how many letters you have behind your name, you know, if you're not teaching me to be uplifting, you dig? That's you know, you're not teaching. Yeah. And that's what we got to do, man.
To our guests that are here today, do you guys have anything you want to speak on, shout out? You want
first, let the listeners know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, social media.
You can find me at One Penny Up or at Sense of Change. Myself, Anti-Chirac, and A. Philip Randolph are presenting the Social Exchange pop-up. It's going to be this upcoming Friday, November the 20th from 7 to 11. And pretty much we're going to be feeding minds as to how you get your own grassroots organization started. What's the blueprint behind it, and how do you be an effective leader in your neighborhood and your community?
No doubt. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, 2tall04, or Facebook, Cedric Washington. Also, I am the executive director of a nonprofit organization entitled NERD Youth Services. NERD is an acronym, stands for Nurturing Education, Reward and Determination. It's also on Facebook under NERD Youth Services.
You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Karen Ratliff. I am a consultant for education, developing curriculum. So speaking of innovating and innovative curriculum, I've written curriculum for major colleges and universities throughout the U.S. with the innovative keyword in mind. So
I think that deserves a hand clap.
Yeah. We got a dog in the building.
You talk about that like, I just kind of developed curriculum for whole universities. That's what we talking about. That's creating the curriculum.
Yeah. I kind of just changed lives, you know.
We appreciate you, sister, and we need you, all right?
Right.
Hey, I follow that. Brandon Williams, my stage name is Real Talk. You could get me on social media at Real Talk Raps, RealTalkraps, on November 24th, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. At the Promontory, we will have the Lee England Jr. Experience. Lee England is co-signed by Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones produces one-man show at the Geffen Playhouse in Beverly Hills, and so I'm bringing him back to the crib along with, I'll be hosting and performing along with LaRoyce Hawkins, comedian T. Murph, and George Jackson III. We will have a 6 p.m. matinee for all ages, and we will have an evening show for the grown folks. Get your tickets. You can text me at 404-585-7325, or you can go to promontorychicago.com for tickets. Once again, that's Tuesday, November 24th, the Lee England Jr. Experience.
And speaking of that, I have one business to promote. It's Arts Grill and Catering for Thanksgiving. For those that don't cook for Thanksgiving or know somebody who needs a plate, you can contact Arts Grill and Catering at catering3@gmail.com. He cooks fried turkeys for $50, baked turkeys, and flavors come in jerk, roasted garlic, chipotle, applewood, traditional, bourbon, and mesquite. Side dishes, half pans, baked mac and cheese, $25, red beans and rice, $25. Sweet potatoes and cabbage are $20 each. And for more details or to place an order, you can call him at 630-673-4034. Again, this is Arts Grill and Catering.
Again, i94 podcast will continue to raise awareness and challenge your mind to all of our listeners. I want to thank all of our guests. This was a great show.
It definitely was.
Learned a lot. I hope our listeners learn a lot. Tell a friend to listen. Play it 3-4 times.
And shout out to all the Black Greeks in the building, because we got a lot of Greeks in the building.
Yep.
Quick, girl, come.
I do want to send a shout out to the Brass, man. November 17th is our Founders Day. Root to the Qs.
Okay, all right.
We got some 1911 love in here.
Oh, yeah. Yo!
Blue fight.
But thank you all again for listening to episode 4 Education. And we out. Peace.
Peace.